Hello and welcome. I'm Geeta Mohan and you're watching World Today. We begin with the big story. Russia confirmed on Thursday that President Vladimir Putin would visit India soon following an invitation from Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his visit to Moscow last year. This will be the first visit by Putin, who has cultivated close ties with Prime Minister Modi since the war with Ukraine broke out in 2022. The two leaders are expected to discuss the Ukraine war as well as geopolitical upheaval following Donald Trump taking over as the president of the United States of America. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said preparations were underway for Putin's visit to India, even though he didn't give any specific dates.
Сегодня Россия и Индия развивают равноправное сотрудничество, основанное...
Russia and India are developing equal cooperation. Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia after his re-election last year was symbolic. Now it's our turn. President Putin has accepted Indian invitation to visit Delhi this year.
Зарубежный визит после своего переизбрания в прошлом году совершил.
I congratulate the Russian International Affairs Council for the successful implementation of this initiative in coordination with the Indian Embassy in Moscow. Such efforts and collaboration are indeed commendable. India and Russia have set an ambitious target of increasing bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030. Investments by both sides in each other's economies continue to grow. Our participation in multilateral forums such as the BRICS, SCO and the G20, and our collaboration at the United Nations and other international platforms underscores the comprehensive nature of cooperation between India and Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin was in India 4 times in past decade. For the annual bilateral summit, it has been a practice that the head of states and governments alternately visit each other's countries. First, COVID pandemic in 2020 broke the rhythm, and then the Ukraine invasion in February 2022. So the last visit of Vladimir Putin to Delhi was right before the Ukraine invasion in December 2021 to attend the annual India-Russia summit. He also came for the 19th edition of the annual bilateral summit in October of 2018. In October 2016, he came to Delhi for the annual India-Russia summit ahead of the 8th BRICS summit in Goa. The year Narendra Modi became Prime Minister, for the first time, Russian President came to Delhi in December 2014 to boost cooperation between the two strategic partners. Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid visits to Russia 6 times in his 3 terms. Within days of starting his 3rd term, Prime Minister Modi began a high-profile visit to Russia in July 2024 to hold the 22nd India-Russia Annual Summit with President Vladimir Putin. And that's when he invited the Russian president to come to Delhi again. September 2019 was when President of Russia met with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was in Russia on an official visit, and together they attended the Eastern Economic Forum that takes place mostly in St. Petersburg. A year before that, in May 2018, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin held their informal summit in the city of Sochi in the Russian Federation. In June 2017, the Indian Prime Minister met President Putin at the 18th Annual India-Russia Summit at St. Petersburg. In December 2015, Putin met Prime Minister Modi again in the Kremlin for the annual bilateral summit, and in July 2015, Prime Minister Modi met with President Putin in Ufa and held bilateral talks ahead of the BRICS and the SCO multilateral summits. To discuss this and more, I'm being joined by Managing Editor, India Today Group, Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us here on the network. This is a major development. How important is it, given the fact that we've not seen a visit by a Russian president outside of maybe the region and Russia in a long time, and this is enhancing and boosting ties between the two countries, even as conflicts are ongoing, and how does it look vis-a-vis the West?
An extremely significant visit of the Russian President Vladimir Putin. It's a special and privileged partnership between India and Russia, between the two countries, and a personal bond between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. They're said to be close personal friends, and we saw that firsthand when Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Moscow. He went for the bilateral summit, then he went again to Kazan for the BRICS summit, and both the occasions his interactions with the Russian president extremely warm. In fact, President Putin took him to his personal house. They had a conversation that lasted several hours till late in the night, in fact much longer than what officers had expected, and it was just the two leaders. Now they intend to take this forward. So you're absolutely right, Geeta. It's a very important signal that goes out to the West, to the world, but it's also a very important signal that goes out to the Indian people and the Russian people, because this is a partnership that's endured the test of time. It's a people-to-people relationship that both countries and both heads of state and government want to strengthen. So if we were to break this down into various fields, so let's talk about defense. Very important partnership. Russia has been a special privileged partner, whether it's the S-400s that we talk about that India acquired from Russia. Some delay in getting all the systems, but that's one aspect. Despite pressure from the West, India went ahead and acquired the S-400 missile defense shield system. Point one. Point two, MiG-29 and Su-30 spares, maintenance. That's something that two countries are looking at. Energy cooperation, that's tremendous. Both the countries moving forward. It's held India in good stead. It's held Russia in good stead through the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So even now we expect a lot of cooperation in many fields.
Right. Right, Gaurav, thank you so much for joining us. With that, we continue on our coverage when it comes to Ukraine, which continues to engage Europe. France pledged 2 billion euros in military aid to Ukraine as some 30 leaders met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris on Thursday to discuss strengthening Kyiv's position and what role they might play if a peace deal is struck with Russia that is mediated by the United States of America. Macron proposed a European force for Ukraine that could respond if attacked by Russia. Sweden plans the largest military buildup since the Cold War amid Russia threat and uncertain US-EU ties. And the European Union is preparing to enhance stockpiling of critical equipment and encourage the public to maintain sufficient supplies for at least 72 hours in case of emergencies. This is indeed unprecedented.
This depends on the stability in the society, but also on his age. He will die soon, that's a fact. Everything will be over. I mean, the question about him, all may end before his. So to say, absolutely safe and unsuccessful, historic life ends. This is what he is afraid of.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said this in an explosive French television interview on Wednesday. That very evening, French President Emmanuel Macron proposed a European armed force for possible deployment in Ukraine in tandem with an eventual peace deal that could respond to a Russian attack if Moscow launched one.
So we are not on the front lines. We don't go to fight. But we are there to guarantee a lasting peace. It's a pacifist approach, and the only ones who would, at that moment, trigger a conflict would be the Russians if they decided again to launch an aggression. This is the strict framework that we are moving forward with. It's a Franco-British text. A great deal of work has been done by the chiefs of staff in London and Paris, and we are going to continue this work. That's the clarification between these different missions.
Russia accused France and Britain of hatching plans for military intervention in Ukraine under the guise of a peacekeeping mission.
couple of words on what the West calls a peace mission. In fact, it is de facto a military intervention in Ukraine under the guise of a peacekeeping mission. London and Paris continue to hatch a plan of military intervention in Ukraine. All of this is disguised under some peace mission. I would like to draw your attention one more time to the fact that Russia is strongly against such a scenario that creates a risk of a direct clash between Russia and NATO.
On Thursday, Ukraine allies met in Paris with new aid and security assurances in mind. 30 world leaders, including NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, Germany's outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz, EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, met in the third summit of what France and Britain have called the coalition of the willing. Though America is not present, France says the summit's outcomes will be shared with the US administration. As the war in Ukraine continues, despite ceasefire on energy sources, Europe is preparing itself for the worst. The European Commission on Wednesday said that the bloc should enhance stockpiling of critical equipment and encourage its people to maintain sufficient supplies for at least 72 hours in case of emergencies like geopolitical crises, including the possibility of armed aggression against EU countries. Bureau Report, India Today.
US President Donald Trump escalates tariff wars. He has announced a new 25% tariffs on all auto imports. Canada and the European Union have slammed the latest tariffs, which have spooked even American companies. Here is a report.
We're going to charge countries for doing business in our country and taking our jobs, taking our wealth, taking a lot of things that they've been taking over the years. They've taken so much out of our country, friend and foe, and frankly, friend has been oftentimes much worse than foe.
With those words, Donald Trump deployed his most aggressive trade weapon yet, signing an executive order that triggers a seismic shift in the global manufacturing landscape. Global stock markets and the auto industry looked on in horror as Trump announced long-promised tariffs of up to 25% on automotive imports. Auto stocks in the United States, Asia and Europe fell as he said the tariffs would be permanent and will take effect on 2nd April, the same date as the reciprocal tariffs.
This will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped and they're moving them.
While Trump insists the tariffs will boost domestic growth, analysts paint a more concerning picture. The import tariffs could add $5,000 to $10,000 to the cost of vehicles sold in the United States. Product on schedules are likely to be disrupted, with estimates forecasting a 30% drop in output and a 10% long-term decline in sales. Ripple effects are expected across the supply chain, impacting both OEMs and suppliers. Relocating vehicle production to the United States will also raise labor costs and may trigger a skilled labor shortage. According to S&P Global, 46% of all light vehicles sold in the United States in 2024 were imported. Just 54% were manufactured domestically. Most of the imports came from its largest trading partners, Mexico, Canada, and Japan. Canada has already signaled the possibility of retaliatory tariffs. Japan, facing a potential 20 basis point hit to its GDP, is equally concerned.
We have put in place the mechanisms so that if it is appropriate for retaliatory tariffs, and there's many considerations to be taken in those regards, and I want to have the meeting of our cabinet, Canada-U.S. cabinet, other considerations. We need to see the details of the executive order.
We believe that the broad scope of trade restrictions imposed by the US government could have a significant impact on the US-Japan trade relationship, as well as the global economy and multilateral trade system as a whole.
the impact on automakers will be widespread. Volkswagen will be the hardest hit with nearly 80% of its US sales imported. Kia imports around 70%, while Toyota imports more than half of its US sales. GM imports roughly 48%, Stellantis about 43%, and Ford around 23%. Tesla produces all its cars in the United States. Even so, Elon Musk has acknowledged that Tesla will still feel a significant impact from the tariffs. For India, the direct impact is largely limited, primarily affecting Tata Motors, which exports made in the United Kingdom JLR vehicles in the US. However, Indian auto part manufacturers could face broader consequences due to disruptions in the global supply chains. Bureau Report, Business Today TV.
US President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he would be willing to reduce tariffs on China to get a deal done with TikTok's Chinese parent company ByteDance to sell the short video app used by 170 million Americans. ByteDance has an April 5th deadline to find a non-Chinese buyer for TikTok or face a US ban on national security grounds that was supposed to have taken effect in January under a 2024 law. This law is the result of American concern that TikTok's ownership by ByteDance makes it vulnerable to the Chinese government's influence and that Beijing could collect data on Americans. China has dismissed Trump's suggestion to reconsider a reduction in tariffs in exchange of a sale of TikTok's operations in the United States of America.
Well, there are numerous ways you can buy TikTok, and we will find the one that's best for the country, for our country. I'm worried about our country more than anything else with respect to TikTok. And China is going to have to play a role in that, possibly, in the form of an approval, maybe. And I think they'll do that. Maybe I'll give them a little reduction in tariffs or something to get it done, you know, because every point in tariff is worth more money than TikTok. If you think, every point, tariff is a much bigger world, and TikTok is big, but every point in tariffs is worth more than TikTok. So in order to get China to do, maybe I'd give them a reduction in tariffs as an example. Sounds like something I'd do.
Could our next story lead to yet another diplomatic row between India and Canada? A major shake-up has taken place in Canadian politics. The Liberal Party has blocked Indian origin MP Chandra Arya from running for Parliament in the coming general elections. Arya is a prominent voice for Canada's Hindu community and for closer relations with India. But that connection to India may have cost Arya his political career in Canada. A bombshell report in Canada's media alleges that Arya was dropped as a candidate because of concerns about his ties to the Indian government.
Chandra Arya, a three-time Liberal MP, has reportedly been on the radar of Canada's intelligence agencies. For the last 2 years, tensions between India and Canada have been high. This has been because of former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's accusation that Indian agents killed pro-Khalistan leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar in British Columbia. India has denied all allegations and relations remain icy. Despite these tensions, Chandra Arya has kept up a close relationship with India. He even made a trip to India last August, where he met Prime Minister Narendra Modi but reportedly did not inform the government. That raised eyebrows in Canada's intelligence agencies. Sources say Canada's intelligence agency, CSIS, had concerns about Arya's ties to India. But the decision to oust him came from within the Liberal Party. According to reports, Arya's responses to questions on foreign interference were inconsistent and worried the Liberal Party. The party had even stopped Arya from running for the leadership of the Liberals. Arya has rubbished these allegations. He claims he was targeted for his stance against the Sikh Khalistani movement, which has made him controversial in Canada. In December 2024, Arya refused to back a motion condemning the 1984 anti-Sikh riots as genocide. That led to a fiery exchange with Sikh MP Sukh Dhaliwal. The timing is critical. With elections just weeks away, the Liberals are facing questions about foreign interference, not just from India, but from China, Pakistan and Iran. This controversy also has an impact on India-Canada relations. Bureau Report, India Today Global.
And here are some other stories from across the globe in World at a Glance.
Tesla has announced it will launch in Saudi Arabia early next month. Elon Musk's EV brand trades in other countries in the Middle East, but not in Saudi Arabia, the Gulf region's largest market. Tesla has seen EV sales slump in Europe, and the brand has been targeted by a wave of protest in the United States since Musk, the company's CEO, became an advisor to US President Donald Trump and began sweeping cuts to the federal government. The launch event is in Riyadh, scheduled for April 10. A US federal judge has granted relief to one of the international broadcasters, Radio Free Europe, Radio's Liberty, from termination by President Donald Trump. US District Judge Royce Lambert has granted Radio Free Europe's request for a temporary restraining order that will help the broadcaster stay on the air and online for the time being. The broadcaster has filed a suit last week to contest Trump's shutdown order, claiming it would violate the Constitution and federal laws. U.S. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has arrived in El Salvador to visit a mega prison holding the Venezuelans deported by the U.S. Noem toured the facilities of the Terrorism Confinement Center, along with El Salvador Minister of Justice and Public Security. The Salvadorian mega prison is in the public eye after President Donald Trump invoked the 1798 Alien Enemies Act on March 15 to swiftly deport alleged members of the Venezuelan gang. Israel's parliament has passed a key part of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's plan to overhaul the judiciary. The law passed on Thursday gives the government a larger role in appointing the judges. It would give 2 of the 9 seats on the Judicial Selection Committee to lawyers chosen by the government and the opposition. Those seats are currently held by the Israeli Bar Association. The political appointees would have the power to veto nominations to Israel's Supreme Court and lower court appointments. The law would not take effect until the next Knesset.
If you today open the social media app X, formerly known as Twitter, you are sure to come across at least one post with a Ghibli-style image. If you have been wondering why that is, it's thanks to ChatGPT's new image generation feature that launched on Tuesday. Cyrus John explains.
There is a new AI in town and it's taken the internet by storm. Now, OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT, has released an image generator that is basically creating these fine-looking, very creative images. But the one that's been the talking point is this Ghibli artwork. Now, as you can see on my laptop, this is a famous scene from an Indian movie. I won't actually name the movie, but you can recognize which one it is. This is a Ghibli art form. Now, Ghibli is basically Japanese anime back from the 1980s, and it was really a sensation in the 1990s and 2000s. Now, this kind of artwork is all over Twitter, as you can see, and some of the examples, this little meme is really famous, and people are creating so many of these and posting them on Twitter. Now, this has been made possible by ChatGPT's new model, which can, again, as you can see, copyright isn't an issue, but it's been trained on so many images that it's been able to create like this. Now, if you want to create something like this, you will require a premium version of ChatGPT. Now, the company is saying this kind of technology will be released in the free version as well in the coming days. All you have to do is go to ChatGPT, just type whatever the image you want to and just say that you convert it into Ghibli format and you will get images like these. Now, even Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, look at this. This is his Twitter DP. Even he has put a Ghibli art form. But that's not the thing. this technology is also creating these illustrations, and they're so complex. You can see that the text, the vocabulary, the animation, and the illustrations are precise. So this is what is incredible about this technology, and it is going to disrupt a lot of the industries, especially the work that graphic artists do. Because if something like this can be created in just a few seconds, imagine what it will do to an industry where people use hours of their time and create stuff like this. So it's a disruptor. A lot of people are liking it, but it's a concern for a lot of people as well. But what do you think about this technology? Isn't it great?
That's all in this edition of World Today. But before I go, we leave you with these images of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un supervising the test of suicide drones with artificial intelligence technology. North Korean state media reported on Thursday that Kim inspected new upgraded reconnaissance drones that are capable of detecting various tactical targets and enemy activities on land and at sea. Photographs published by the state media showed a fixed-wing unmanned aerial vehicle zeroing in on a tank-shaped target, then exploding in flames. With that, it's goodbye and take care.